welcome to Mission Majjhima. Ajahn. Ajahn, so tell us about Majjhima number 96, the Esukārī Sutta.
So in the Esukārī Sutta, we continue our theme of, within this chapter on the Brahmins, with the Buddha having a discourse with a Brahmin and centering largely, as with some of his previous suttas, with him navigating or speaking to the Brahminical beliefs, specifically here around caste. And Esukārī, a Brahmin, asserts that there are 4 kinds of service, paricharya, prescribed by the Brahmins, and basically aligns these to castes. So you have the fact that a Brahmin can be served by one of his own caste, a Brahmin, or any of the lower castes, whether it be a Kshatriya, a noble, a Vaisa, a merchant, or a Sutta, a kind of worker. And then goes down that ladder saying that a Kshatriya could be served by a Kshatriya or a Vaisa or Sutta, and so on. So kind of this hierarchy. The Buddha asks who if all the world gave the Brahmins the right to make this prescription, and Esukārī admits the world did not actually kind of buy into this one, and so the Buddha gives a kind of funny analogy about people who someone who comes and forces a penniless man to take a piece of meat and then charges him for it as well. The Buddha then says, he gives a very simple prescription. He says, I do not say that all should be served or no one should be served. What I say is that if, when serving someone, one gets better, not worse, then that person should be served. A very simple metric. And resonant with a sutta we talked about long ago, the Vanapatta Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 17, where the Buddha says that when evaluating one's dwelling or where one's staying, one should see, does my mindfulness increase when I'm here? Even if it's difficult, if one's mindfulness is increasing, often it's a place worth staying. So the metric not being who we like to serve, but what makes us better. And later on in the sutta, he'll go into specifically 5 wealths, what are outlined as wealths in the Dana Sutta, namely, I believe, faith, virtue, learning, wisdom, and giving, or learning, giving, and wisdom. And that if these grow in one, then one should continue to serve that person, which is really useful. As monastics, we serve those who are senior to us in the Sangha. And sometimes those aren't always people you get along with or even inspired by, and you don't like serving them. And yet I can say some of those, and I'm sure Ajahn Kodo may be able to relate, like sometimes serving those people who are a little more difficult to serve for you and require a deeper level of humility, actually you get much better from that act. The Buddha then goes on to say that one is not better because of one's birth or beauty or wealth, but rather because any individual can engage in the wholesome or unwholesome courses of action which either taint or cleanse the heart. And that specifically, whether one's serving is increasing these 5 wealths internally, that is what is the relevant metric. So Esukārī then speaks about how there's these different kinds of wealth for each caste, basically their profession. Brahmins going for alms, even rich Brahmins would do this, Kshatriyas a bow and quiver for war, and so on. And that if one does not attend to one's wealth or duty, one's being neglectful. The Buddha once again asked, if the world gave permission for the Brahmins to prescribe this, Esukārī admits they did not. The forced morsel simile is invoked again. And then the Buddha says, actually, one's true wealth is one's lokuttara dhamma, basically one's noble realization. And then he invokes this very interesting simile, a beautiful one, where first he states that wherever one is reborn, one might be reckoned by that birth, in the sense of like, labeled as a Brahmin in this ancient Indian conception. But just as a fire might be reckoned or named by its fuel, but the radiance from the flame would be the same in all these cases. Similarly, even though one might be reckoned as a Brahmin or a Kshatriya based on this rebirth, one's noble attainment or one's ability to go forth, and he lays out this path of going forth into the homeless life and practicing what is wholesome, it's the same for each caste. Each caste has the ability to apply effort and invoke this flame of pure radiance. And there, interestingly, just his motioning towards the kind of fragility of a belief system based on rebirth, or on caste on birth, because we all are transmigrating in a Buddhist conception from birth to birth and status to status. He then finishes just by stating that any caste can kind of undertake the three duties that Brahmins often do: ritual bathing, spreading loving kindness, and igniting a flame, saying that this isn't specifically something only Brahmins are able to do. Esukārī gains faith. So Arjun, what would you draw out of this sutta?
For me, one of the things that came up is actually a quote by Martin Luther King Jr., who is kind of considered a saint by many in modern secular America, for sure, and around the world. But the quote is in his I Have a Dream speech, that I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And it's a profound statement. It has resonance. His 4 little children with the 4 castes. Of course, he wasn't necessarily explicitly talking about that. He actually did have 4 children. But I love how modern the Buddhist teachings can be. Oftentimes with religious teachings, especially if one is coming from a secular background, you're always a bit on edge. Like, am I going to find out that this ancient teacher was racist, or was sexist, or was homophobic, or Islamophobic? And there was no Islam at the time of the Buddha, so certainly not that last one. And really none of the former either. You read these ancient suttas, and I love that they do translate so well. They do, even from 2,600 years ago in India, the Buddha was so cosmopolitan and modern in his thinking. They can be held and relate so well. The second thing that is certainly related, but what this principle of brahmacharya, or of service or attendance, it's related in its meaning to the word upataka or upatana, which is a different word for attendance. And upatak is a monastic attendant or a lay attendant. But brahmacharya comes from the root char, which means to walk, and upataka from ta, which means to stand. But it's a role. And here, service is often, related in modern English, this idea of being servile, and that I'll never serve another man or something like that. Whereas here the Buddha says, I don't say that no one should be served, and I don't say that everyone should be served. You should be discerning in who you attend to, who you walk around with, who you stand close to, and that you should attend to, you should serve those who, when you serve them, your saddha, your faith, your sila, your virtue, your sutta, or your learning, your chaga, or renunciation, generosity, and your panya increase. And as you noted, this is called the fivefold noble growth, or sometimes also called noble wealth, in comparison to the wealth of different professions or different castes. And in the Digha Janu Sutta, Anguttara 8.54, we find the Buddha defining noble friendship or accomplishment in kalyana mittata, accomplishment in spiritual friendship. And he says, what is accomplishment in spiritual friendship? It is when one knows that there's someone else, the son of a layman, or a layman who is accomplished in faith, saddha sampanna, sila sampanna, accomplished in virtue, accomplished in generosity, accomplished in wisdom. He doesn't in this list mention learning, but those 4 accomplishments, what should one do? One should associate with that person, discourse with that person, speak with that person, and should emulate, anusika, that person. One should try to be like that person in that realm. And I think this is a great principle in general, this noting other people's skills. And it's not the case that all of your friends have to be superheroes and be extremely skilled in everything, but having the discerning eye and a brain which can actually see, oh yeah, this person is great at faith, and I could improve in that, and then associating anusikana, training in that to actually gain wealth, to improve my capacity at that. So I think that's just a great principle in terms of how and with whom one associates with. So yeah, I think that's just great. Ajahn, so what is the word of the week?
The word of the week is lokuttara, which means transcendent, supramundane. It comes from the word loka for world, and uttara, which means beyond or above. And it's the word we use to describe kind of transcendent states of noble attainment within the Buddhist framework.
Okay. Well, let's incline in that direction, doing our duty in the world and towards transcendence as well. And we'll see you over on Zoom or see you next week for Majjhima 97. Ajahn.